بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله صلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Inshallah, the long-awaited and anticipated lecture on building your legacy through effective parent-child relations. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever seen a book on Islamic or on parenting. Good job, he saw a book before. On parenting from an Islamic perspective. If you've ever seen a book. Seen a book. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I need about 10 people. If you've ever read a book on parenting from an Islamic perspective. The first people who saw it, about 10 people. 10 from our sisters and brothers. Did you all know that probably parenting in Islam is one of the least written on subjects? Did you know that? One of the least written on subjects. Alhamdulillah, with the turn of the 20th century, from the 2000s or so, we've had more and more material. But there was a time when there existed in the English language no material on parenting in Islam. And there was a time when in the Arabic language most of the material on parenting in Islam were outdated. And they did not speak to the psychological changes of the child, the psychological developments of the child, and they did not speak on other key aspects. But alhamdulillah, guess what? You no longer have an excuse to not know from an Islamic perspective how to raise your children. You no longer have an excuse. Good. Yes, this is a reason why. We've started this lecture to help get you started, kick-started. Now listen, you will not learn everything from this series. This is just to jolt some emotion and to let you know that there's so much material out there that you have no reason for your kids to be left to the television and left to the wild and left to public schools and left to the other various influences. You have no excuse. Here's a book here called Parent-Child Relations, A Guide to Raising Children. It is a huge textbook. You see it? Look. It's huge. I'm basing this lecture off of the blueprint laid down in this book. So this is a beautiful, huge search book. It's written by 3 authors. Of course, I'm endorsing the fact that we have material written on Islamic parenting to this extent. Of course, any mistakes in the book I'm not endorsing, but I'm endorsing definitely the material. Here's another example. Bringing Up Children in Islam. Another example. It's not as big as this, but here's another example. The Ideal Father. A comprehensive book outlining the principles of being an ideal father. Different scholars from different places of the world. India, Pakistan, Arab worlds, some professionals. Answers to frequently asked questions on parenting, part 1. Smaller book. There's also a part 2 to that book, which is answers on frequently or too frequently asked questions on parenting, part 2. For example, we also have Loving Our Parents, Stories of Duties and Obligations. Another book. This is Dar Salam. Family Leadership, or Qiwama. You ever heard of Ar-Rijalu Qawwamuna 'ala Nisa? Well, guess what? This book said an obligation to fulfill, not an excuse to abuse. An obligation to fulfill. Qiwama, or leadership, is an obligation to fulfill, not an excuse to abuse. This reminds me, one time I was in Yemen driving, and as you all know, I wasn't driving, I was too young to drive. But I was in the taxi, and there was a man there, and he was smoking cigarettes, and he had a mouthful of qat. And it was bothering me, as it bothers me today, as it bothers most of you. And I was sitting next to him, and I said, I asked him his name and everything. I was nice to him, he was nice to me, we were smiling and everything. And then he just kept smoking, kept smoking. So I asked him, are you married? And he said, yes. And I said, your wife doesn't advise you not to smoke? And you know what he said? Ar-Rijalu Qawwamuna 'ala Nisa. Men are in charge of women. And I said, whoa, hold up. I mean, that doesn't mean she can't advise you. I mean, you're doing something. I mean, you're harming yourself, you're killing yourself for crying out loud. She can't advise you not to smoke. But that's the cultural understanding. That even when the man is wrong, the wife can't advise him. La ilaha illallah. This was his understanding. It's a misrepresentation, and this debunks some of that. Alhamdulillah. It's, again, I'm not endorsing any of the mistakes of any of these books, but I'm letting you know that there are enough material, or there is enough material out there for you not to be ignorant any longer about this subject. Another book, Parenting in the West. Some of these are taken from this big book, and some of these books reference one another, and a lot of them are by the same authors, alhamdulillah, so they're doing a lot of work. Another example, Parenting Skills based on the Quranic Sunnah and Sunnah with practical examples for various ages. All of these are in my library, by the way, so you guys want to borrow it, no problem. I'll let you borrow it, but you got to purchase the book too. You know, purchase it from a different venue, inshallah. There's two books here written by the same author, Cherishing Childhood and Addressing Adolescence, a guide to parenting in Islam. Two smaller books. Some of these are written by professionals, some of them written by concerned parents, some of them written by more scholarly figures. But you have a varying array of material that leaves us with no excuse to any longer be ignorant about this. And this one is called The War Within Our Hearts. And this is more addressing teenage issues of dating, clubbing, chats and social media, drugs, friends, suicide, depression, and abuse, and so forth. Other topics that you don't usually hear on the minbar. People are actually writing about them to solve the issues. So alhamdulillah, so much material, and there are many more books like these. So alhamdulillah, I suggest you all start purchasing and encourage yourselves with the knowledge. So inshallah, alhamdulillah, that's the introduction, that there are many books out there for this field. Part 2. Part 2 is, I'm going to give you some references for each lecture, and for each lecture, at the beginning of each lecture, I'm going to give you some references of parent-child relation in the Quran. I'm not going to give you all at one time, because it's going to take 3-4 lectures just to give you all of them at one time. But I'll divide these references at the beginning of each of our lectures. Number 1, Allah said in Surah Taha, which is Surah number 20, verse number 117, so we said to Adam, indeed, this is an enemy to you and your wife. Do not let him remove you from paradise, because you will suffer. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advising Adam to be cautious of Satan. He is an enemy for you and your wife. So letting us know that a family starts first with who? 2 people, husband and wife. And the devil is your enemy. Remember that. And he advised Adam. He did not advise Eve. He advised Adam directly. Do not you, Adam, do not allow Satan to get you and your wife out of here, because you, Adam, will suffer. Why will he suffer? As scholars of tafsir have said, that he is the one who's going to toil on behalf of the wife, and go out and have to work, and go out and have to be hot, sweat, and tire himself for seeking rizq. Does let you also know that the man is placed with the charge of protecting and caring for and nurturing his family. He is the one who's going to be asked first about his family. Then his wife will be asked about her responsibilities. Then the children will be asked about theirs. But the one who was first in line is the father, to be asked and questioned about his dealing with his family. Second example or quote from the Quran in Surah Al-A'raf, which is Surah number 7, verses 189 and 190. Allah said, it is He who created you all from one soul, and created from that soul its mate, so that he might dwell in security with her. He might find comfort in her. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let the relationship between a man and a woman be that of comfort and relaxation and security with one another. So when he covered her, meaning the husband, she carried a light burden and continued with that light burden, which is the baby. So once that baby became heavy, they invoke their Lord saying, "Oh Allah, if you give us a healthy child, we will be grateful to you." Good relationship between man and wife, and the babies come and they're asking Allah for what? A healthy child. Most of you are parents, and alhamdulillah, you were happy the day that your child came out healthy. You were so excited. This lets you know that this is what couples want, healthy, good children. So then, Allah said, when He gave them a child, so now He took them from referring to Adam and Eve to referring to the rest of, or the most of the human beings. When He finally gives you children, جَعَلَ لَهُ شُرَكَاءَ فِيمَا آتَاهُمَا, they adopt partners with what Allah had given them. Meaning parents start to adopt idolatry and idol worship and worship of other than Allah, even though they asked Allah for a healthy child, and that's what Allah gave them, a healthy child. So when the healthy child came, they started to worship other than Allah and show gratitude to other than Allah. Again, He's not talking about Adam and Eve. He's talking about the norm of the children of Adam and Eve. When Allah gives them something, they turn around and thank others for it. And the last reference is in Surah Ma'idah, Surah number 5, verses 27 to 31, showing us where sibling rivalry. Who ever heard of sibling rivalry? What is sibling rivalry? Yes, what is it?
Basically, if there's an age gap between two siblings, they have issues with themselves. Like, don't touch my stuff, they don't do that.
Brother Murtaza said that if there's an age gap between the children, they have issues between one another, and they say, don't touch my stuff, and don't, play with that, and so forth. Do any of you have these problems with your brothers or sisters? Children, you have these problems? You guys sitting next to each other, isn't that cute? Sitting next to each other, they both say, yeah, I have this problem. Right? Sibling rivalry. Yes, mister?
I was going to say, like, maybe competition toward fathers and mothers' love.
That's also their competition for mother's love and father's love. So sibling rivalry started with two sons of Adam. Allah said, recite to them the story of Adam's two sons in truth when they both offered sacrifice to Allah. It was accepted from one of them, but it was not accepted to the other. The former, or the first one, said, the latter, said, I am going to kill you. The other said, Allah accepts from righteous people. And then he said, if you stretch your hand out to kill me, then I will never stretch my hand out to kill you. I'm afraid of Allah, Lord of all the worlds. That wasn't enough. That advice wasn't enough. He then said, I want you to carry my sin and your sin so that you can be of the people of the hellfire. And that is the reward of those who do wrong. So, he killed his brother. And because of that, he became of the losers. Then Allah said that He sent a crow searching on the ground to show him how to hide the disgrace of his brother. And when he saw that, he said, woe to me, I have failed to be like this crow to hide the body of my brother. And he became regretful. So sibling rivalry, this argument between siblings, doesn't start in your home. It's a natural mode of having a family. But there are solutions to sibling rivalry. And many of the other problems that we will mention, inshallah, and the rest of those references, I will mention them again in the beginning of our lectures. To proceed. Somebody tell me, what is the difference between parenting and parenthood? Parenting and parenthood. Yes, sir.
Parenting is the action of being a parent, and parenthood is the experience of being a parent.
Pretty good. I like that. That's pretty much it. That Parenting is actually being an active parent. Whereas parenthood means becoming a parent. Where you going? Come right back.
Drink of water.
Hurry up. Becoming a parent, anybody can become a parent. You can be married or not married. Unfortunately, most people, especially in our generations, they experiment with the opposite gender and become parents before being married, which is wrong. It's not allowed in Islam. So they become parents. But parenting is a reality that demands emotional, psychological, and spiritual maturity. To be a parent, you need to be mature emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Because the parent must not only be a parent, but the parent must be a teacher, a mentor, and a spiritual guide. The parent must be what? A teacher, a mentor, and a spiritual guide. You know how you come here and I give you a khatira, or a khutbah, or a lecture, and you feel inspired? You go back home, it gives you, mashallah, or any other imam for that matter. The parents should be doing that at home with their children. It should start there. And then when you bring them here, I take you further. But what happens is, the reality is, most of this development is not happening at home. And then the parents drag their kids to the masjid and say, Shaykh, fix my son. Shaykh, give advice to my daughter. That's wrong. It's not right. Because the first teacher are the parents. They're supposed to turn into mentors, and they're supposed to be spiritual guides. We will mention some examples from the Quran, inshallah, of that next week. Where do you think parenting usually develops from? Tell me. How do people learn how to be parents? Yes?
I think most of it comes from your own upbringing.
That's right. Most of it comes from your own upbringing, yes.
The elders.
The elders. That's right. It comes from how you were raised. That's where most parenting comes from. And in that matter, parents usually rely on instinct and common sense. Instinct and common sense that are sometimes outdated. And their instinct and common sense and their experience also came from uninformed parents. And then their upbringing or raising their children came from uninformed parents too. And theirs from uninformed parents. And theirs from uninformed parents. And so on. You see how the cycle goes? Remember, I asked you all, how many of you read a book on parenting in Islam? Maybe 10 of you out of 60, 70 of you here. Right? Just how it is. It's just how it's been. Parenting is the most important task, yet it is the most untrained for occupation in the whole world. Unfortunately, people think, most Muslims think, alhamdulillah, I accepted Islam at the age of 12, but most of the Muslims think, and this is a general thought, not everybody, but most people think that because they're born Muslims, that they don't have to put the effort to be a Muslim and have and maintain an Islamic identity. Have you ever seen two physicians have a child and then the child claims that the child themselves claims that they are automatically a physician? Would you have this child do some surgery on you, even if the child grew up? Would you let the child or adult now do surgery on you because both of their parents were physicians? Absolutely not. If both of their parents were mechanics and that person didn't go to school, you won't let them work on your car. That's your car, for crying out loud, right? If both of their parents were carpenters and build houses, you would not let them build a house for you until they showed you the qualifications. But most Muslims are born Muslims, but never take the steps to properly educate themselves. Yes, they're stranded in education here and there. Honestly, stranded here and there, maybe a certain level of schooling you did when you did in school. But when you did it in school, most parents, they don't like Islamiyah. They don't like Sharia. Most of the, when you were kids, you didn't, that was the last of the subjects you enjoyed. And for our Arab-speaking brothers, Arabic was the most hated. For most people, it was the most hated subject. People didn't care about nahwu and sarf, grammar, and tafsir, stuff like that. People didn't, they didn't have that much care for it. In fact, there exists in the majority Muslim communities or countries, the person who finishes last in high school is the one who becomes a mulvi, a scholar. Because all of the intelligent people, they become engineers and doctors and so forth. But the one who just finished last, who could hardly do anything, you give them, well, he has to survive somehow, so you send him to the masjid to learn, send him to the madrasa so he becomes a sheikh, memorize Quran, and then, alhamdulillah, you hope that he will have a means of survival by that. That's backwards. Are you kidding me? And it's become a culture, inherited generation after generation. Brothers and sisters, we have no excuse to continue like this anymore. Because we came over here to the West, we start off from a clean slate. We can make the proper Islamic culture, and we have no excuse to hold on to the baggage. None whatsoever. We can establish it in our masajid, inshallah. Now, what are some of the efforts that you think concerned parents do for the development of their children? Some of the efforts that concerned parents do to develop their children. A concerned parent would do usually what? For their kids. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would hope that they would understand the relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. But typically speaking, yes, so that's right. You hope that they would understand and connect the child with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if the parents are connecting the child to Allah, then why is it that people coming to the masajid, coming to the imam when the child is about to graduate high school and say, Imam, please give my son some Islam. Give my daughters. I've done it myself. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me success with many kids that parents brought them to me just like that. Last minute. Save him. Give him some identity. I'm going to send him to college. I can't send him like this. Alhamdulillah. And Allah gave me success to be myself with the kids and give them what I had. And they were influenced. And they, alhamdulillah, they maintain to this day an Islamic identity. And I laugh at the memories that they mention about what I said and stuff like that, and how they remembered and how it had an effect on their life. I'm amazed by how Allah can benefit people like that and save the children like that, even with my efforts. I'm amazed at that. So alhamdulillah, we ask that Allah accept from us. But for the most part, parents do what? Buy toys? Rings a bell? Buy toys. You buying toys from the time the baby coming out. You want to get the one that rattles, right? Something they can start chewing on, something they can feel the texture, the difference of it. You want to buy just the first thing, almost you buy toys. In fact, when people come to your aqiqah, what do they bring you? Gifts for the baby. You buy clothing for the kids, right? After they get to a certain age, what do you do? About 6 years old, 5 years old, what do you do? We already did toys. What do you do?
Clothing.
Clothing, we did clothing already, because they weren't naked without toys the whole time, 6 years. About 5, 6 years old, what did they do?
Sweets.
Send them to school. Send them?
Get them food.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been starving for 6 years. About 6 years, 5 years, they go to school, right? Okay, they go to school. Then after that, especially in this time, before they even get a phone, they know the phone. So forget about getting them a phone at the teenagers, like it used to be when I was a kid. They play with your phone day and night. You know what I did? I put some educational apps on my phone, and I let my kids play with it like they have to almost beg me to play with it. There's one app that I had called, that I got called ABC Mouse. I like it. And it has a classroom. He mentioned it. That's what ABC Mouse. It's really decent. I mean, it's teaching the kids. So they're playing games, but they're learning ABCs, 1, 2, 3, stuff like that. There's another app that I got. It's called Ali Huda, Muslim app. And I don't let them play every day. They have to, I want to watch. Then I'll wait a while, then I'll give it to them. So, because I figured out that All of the people I've seen that their kids, the first thing they do, picking up the iPhone, picking up the smartphone, and they know how to work it better than some of us. And they're 3 years old. So usually there's a certain age where you give the child their own phone. Then you get them a computer or a laptop. You know how long it took me to get a computer? You know how old I was when I got a computer? I was 20 years old when I got my first laptop. 20 years old. That was 7 years ago. It's not this one. It was another one similar. This is like my second one. I didn't get a smartphone until I was 22.
Oh my God.
And that's because I burnt it. Look, you heard that? See how amazing that is? I didn't get a smartphone until I was 22 because I was okay with the regular phone. My mother raised me very simply. I didn't need much. And I was always catching up with my friends. They always had the latest video games. I had the one from 5 years ago. And I was perfectly fine with that. So guess what? If you taught your kids how to suffice themselves with the least, if you teach it to them and live it, they'll suffice themselves with the least. But if you keep trying to keep up with the Joneses, well, in this case, you're trying to keep up with the Ahmeds and the Fatimas and the Aishas. You're trying to keep up with our Muslim friends and buying them all the stuff. They will always want more. And they will give you a headache because you didn't get them the latest video game that costs $50 or $100. Or get them the upgrade package and all of this stuff that we have. They will give you a headache for it. Because you didn't teach them how to الرضا بالقليل. My mother taught it to me. I didn't get really good action figures until I was 10 years old. And my mom celebrated Christmas. We had Christmas presents. I still remember that was the first time I got a Game Boy Color. I was 10 years old. And I was still playing Pokemon Yellow while everybody already was playing Ruby and all of the other colors. You guys remember Pokemon? Yeah, I grew up on the same stuff. The same stuff that your kids grow up on, I grew up on all of it. I was always behind, but that was okay for me. I didn't have any wants, any needs. I was pleased with what that was, alhamdulillah, and alhamdulillah, Allah kept that personality with me until today, alhamdulillah. So after that, you get them games. Like we mentioned. You encourage them to have friends. You check up on their grades. You attend parent-teacher associating meetings. But you weren't really concerned about the type of toys you got them. You weren't really conscious, you just got them toys. You weren't concerned about the type of clothing that they wear and the messages that is on the clothing. Like one day, one kid came here and he had a goddess on his shirt. You know Nike? Yes. Nike is a Roman goddess, the goddess of victory. The Nike with the check. That's what that is. And he came, he didn't know, alhamdulillah, he didn't know. The idol was on his shirt. He walked in the masjid. I said, son, why you got an idol on your shirt? And look, her breasts are out. Wallahi, the breast of the idol was out on his shirt. He said, Sheikh, no. I said, yeah, right there. He said, no. Oh man, I didn't know that. Oh Allah, I didn't know that. So then I looked up Nike for him, and I showed him the images. She's a goddess, Greek goddess of victory. And you got it on your shirt. He has no clue. His parents doesn't know. You know, poor people, they don't know. They don't. You're not really concerned. When you send them to school, yes, for the most part now, you want them to go to the best school, but you're not really concerned about the influences that they're going to come across in school. Because I think if most of you were concerned about that, then you would probably prepare them beforehand. Why are they bringing all the trash back to your house? Listen to gangster rap music and sagging their pants and experimenting with drugs and flirting with girls on the Snapchat and Instagram. And you have no clue. You have no clue because you weren't that concept when you just sent them to school. But you have all of these, you'll notice that you have to plan and you have to be diligent. When you got them a computer, you didn't set it up in a certain way where you would block them from certain websites. You got them a phone, you just just let them download any app, no problem. And you get them this, why are you getting them unlimited data? What they need unlimited data for? What they're going to do is watch movies. Really, I mean, you have no control. You've just let them go. But after that, when you encourage them to have friends, you didn't tell them what type of friends to have. And what type of friends are bad friends. You just let them have friends. Maybe you checked their grades, but you didn't check their homework. Why? You didn't check their classwork. Why? You didn't engage them of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Alhamdulillah, when you attended a PTA meeting, you felt like you were doing a good job. That's great. Alhamdulillah, that is a good job. But now you should know the curriculum that the teacher is teaching you. You send them to public school and you don't know that they're teaching them sex education? And the sex education that they're teaching them is rated R. And they're teaching it in school. When you put them on a television, you forgot that the kids, the likeness of the human being, they're more attracted to the mature content. So even the video games are the most mature content, and they're 10, 9, 8 years old playing GTA, Grand Theft Auto. Shooting people and nudity on the video. You had no clue. You just bought them the game. What am I saying here? What do you think I'm trying? What is my point? All of those examples that I give, what do you think my point is?
Lack of involvement.
Unaware.
Lack of involvement.
Lack of involvement. My brother said unaware. What else?
Be engaged.
We have to be engaged. Plan.
Supervision.
Supervision. Sisters.
Educate himself like what they are doing.
Get, again?
Educate himself what is going on, not be far away. I don't know what is going on Snapchat or as they are from any other country.
Education.
Good job. Educating the kids and educating yourself about what's going on, what Snapchat is, what Facebook is, what are the, and what are the capabilities of these. Yes, sir.
Respect and manner for others.
Respect and manners for others. How?
Teaching from the home.
Teaching from the home, definitely. Because if you teach your kids at home, then they will be a lot less of a burden on people when they come to the masjid, right? You don't have to shout at them, tell them stop running up and down the masjid and playing with the water and the, they'll be a lot less of a burden. So we're getting, the picture that we're trying to paint here is that parenting is a much bigger job than you actually expected it to be. It is a much bigger job. Having a kid and putting clothes and food and checking their grades, that's not enough. And letting them have friends and phones and all of this, it's not enough. There has to be some planning. So that's what this is for, alhamdulillah. I hope I didn't make you feel beat up or anything. That's not my intention. But I want to pull the wool off your eyes. I want to pull the screen down. I want to get rid of the smoke so you can see. So now you can say, I'm going to take charge of it and I'm going to be more responsible and I'm going to try my best. And alhamdulillah, that's the key. Guess what? There are no shortcuts to parenting. This job takes diligence and perseverance. Parenting is always under construction. You ever go to a website and they say website under construction? Parenting is always under construction. Because you're always going to be trying. You're always going to be making mistakes. Right? You're always going to forget. You're always going to misspeak. You're going to be too angry. You're going to be too soft. It's always like that. It's always under construction. Parenting is a big deal. Moms and dads have to turn to psychologists and psychiatrists and mentors and spiritual guides with no training. They have no, decent training for this, but they all of a sudden are thrown into this big ocean of having a child. Guess what? There are 4 stages of children's development that requires their own physical, emotional, social, and psychological resources from parents. 4 stages that you have to focus on. Stage number 1, infants, toddlers, and preschoolers that start from age 1 month to 7 years old. That's its own arena. That's when you are the superhero of their lives. Mom and dad are the best people that these kids know. If you don't maintain that, you'll see that the problems coming back. You got to maintain that hero concept, because I've seen kids, they think that their parents can move a mountain. And some of your parents, inshallah, I think they can, right? If they try hard enough. So 1 month to 7 years old. Now you have the pre-teenagers. that are about 8 years old to 12 years old. That's a whole different arena that you have to be equipped to deal with. Then you have the young teenagers that are 13 to 16 years old. That's a whole different arena that you have to be equipped and educated to how to deal with that. And number 4, you have young adults that are from 17 years old until 22. That's a whole different arena that you have to be equipped and ready to deal with. There are 4 common parenting styles. Number 1, dictatorial. Number 2, authoritative. Number 3, permissive. And number 4, consultative. As for dictatorial, you know what a dictator is? Rule by the fist. That's one of those
My way, highway.
my way or highway. That's where the parents demand and the children obey, or else. Yeah, wait, like me, right? Like you're going to be in trouble if you don't listen. That's one way. That's a dictatorship rule of the children, with harshness and shouting and arguing and fighting. You just subdue the child. That's one way. Authoritative. Authoritative is where there is attention that is paid to the demands of the parents, and that there is attention that is paid to the needs of the children. So the child pays attention to the demand of the parents, and the parents pay attention to the needs of the child. Again, we used demands and needs. Parents have demands. Children have needs. Children pay attention to the demands, and they are taught how to pay attention to the demands of the parents. And the parents are paying attention to the needs of the children. And it's a seesaw effect. Rules and demands are clearly explained to the children so that they do not think that these rules and demands are meaningless, and that they're being bossed around. For example, if a child asks you politely what's going on or why, and you say, because I said so, it's not quite explaining to them why. Children at a certain age, they do need why. When they're not challenging you, they would like to understand why, what's going on. And then that translates over into your prayer. Why do we pray? Most of us don't know, but also do your children not know about why we pray? Have you ever explained it to them? Why do we fast? Why do we pay zakat? Why are there some rich in the world and some poor? Why are masajid built? Why are there men and women? These are questions and things that have to be explained. You have the perfect opportunity to educate yourselves, because most of you have at least bachelor's degrees. Alhamdulillah. At least some of you even masters and PhDs. So you went and excelled in your secular study, but you needed to excel in parental study also, so that you can give it to them fresh and clean and build your legacy. The third type of parenting is permissive. Permissive is where the children demand and the parents follow. The parents obey and fulfill every wish of the child, and the parents feel threatened when they don't listen to the child. That's a permissive type, where the children are the boss. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "And talid al-amatu rabbataha." One of the signs of the Day of Judgment is that a woman will give birth to her mistress, meaning her master. She will give birth to her own master. Where the child, one of the interpretations is the child bossed the parents around as if the parents are slaved and owned by the children. And we see it in our society today.
Yes, correct.
We see it. And those kids that you sending your kids to public school with, and some of our Islamic school kids too, not that it's Islamic school's fault, but the fault is at home. Some of those kids boss their children or parents around too. And in fact, I've seen it in front of my eyes here at the masjid. I'm mostly with the boys. I haven't seen many of the girls. I don't have much interaction with the girls. I see them passing. But the boys, I've seen a kid tell his mother he doesn't want to do it. Yani, in front of me, mom asked him very politely, son, why don't you, help out? Why don't you clean up? They're cleaning up in the masjid. Why don't you take a rag and wipe something? And so on and so forth. And he said, Mama, ma biddi. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. He said this to his mom. I said, boy, if you don't pick up that rag and wipe like your mama told you, who are you talking to? But see, the kid is bossing his mama around. So I had to come and reinforce it. I had to come and save the situation. Because of course, when there are problems in our community, those of us who can help, we have to step up and help. We can't just walk by and let somebody be oppressed and told what to do by their children. You don't stand up. You're men. You are concerned sisters and women. Stand up and defend that sister and defend that brother from their children. Show those children that we're a community and we're all a family. It's a responsibility, wallah.
But unfortunately, community, some people are mind your own business. That's my son.
Exactly, and that's what we're trying to serve. We're trying to solve that concept of mind your own business. Every child in here, I love them and I would treat them like my own children. I would do for them what I do for my own children.
Yeah.
Because that's what you need. We're all a family. And we'll discuss the concept of extended family and the lack of it, especially in the West. The fourth type of parenting is consultative, a consulting type, where the parents negotiate with their children and include their children in the decision making. Now I want you to kind of figure out, where do you fall? Do you have a dictatorial or dictator type parenting style? Do you have authoritative style where things are clearly spelled out for kids to understand? There's attention to your needs and attention to the children's needs. Do you have a permissive parenting style where your children boss you around and you just have to follow what they say and they shout at you and tell you what they want to eat and so forth? Or do you have the consultative one where you're basically kind of putting the children semi at your level, you consult them for everything and you include them in the decision making? I would suggest that an authoritative with a consultative style, a combined of both, where you are respected, but you do also request the opinion and decision of the child to get them to engage in the process. And the evidence for that is when Ibrahim alayhi salam said to his son Ismail, my dear son, I saw in a dream that I'm slaughtering you. What do you think about it? So he asked his son, what do you think about it? He asking his son about being slaughtered. But he still asked his position, what is his thoughts about that. So we'll get into that evidence, inshallah, possibly next week. We must master the training approach when dealing with children, where we are training our children. We're leaving a legacy. You ever go to a job where you have 2-week training, 3-week training, a month training? They're trying to give you the tools that you need to be a good employee at the job and keep your job. Similarly, we are training our children to live after we're dead. We're training our children as our parents trained us. So we must master training our children. And if we give them a bunch of do's and don'ts that are not explained or explained by because I said so, then we're really dominating them. We're not training them. If we're bossing them around with do's and don'ts and do's and don'ts and oh, just listen because I said it. I'm your dad, just listen. I'm your mom, just listen. No, explain to them, reason with them, especially in America. See that I'm your dad stuff and bossing them around, that probably worked in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Jordan and all of the other beautiful Muslim countries like Yemen and so forth. It might have worked there because you have a community and a culture that kind of supports that mode of conduct. But it will not work, and it is not working in the West. The more you behave like that with your children, the more rebellious they'll become.
They're gone.
And they're gone. Soon as they turn 18, they can't wait. They talk to their friends. They talk to their Sunday school teacher. Man, when I turn 18, I'm out. My parents ain't going to see dust behind me. I'm gone. Pack my stuff and roll out. They're serious about it. Because that doesn't work it doesn't work in the West. You have to take an approach where you're giving them dignity, teaching them how to respect you, respecting them also, right? It takes a lot more work. So when you came over here on that beautiful plane as a student to the West to get your education and to pursue a career, you had no clue about these things.
That's why they say monkey see, monkey do.
Right. You had no clue. You just came, you got a job as a pizza parlor and a taxi driver like everybody else. You survived off of coffee and pizza for your, bachelor, your education, and survived off the, various other, grilled cheese sandwiches and so on and so forth. You survived. And you finally got a wife, alhamdulillah, then you got a job, then the kids start coming. You weren't prepared. It just rolled out. You send your kids to school and they come back with crazy hairdos and sagging pants and other stuff, cussing and all. I mean, I'm saying that we have to be very careful and very strategic in dealing with our kids and raising them, alhamdulillah. Good parenting begins with choosing a good spouse. We will dedicate some time to choosing a good spouse. Alhamdulillah, I do not doubt that your spouses, those of you who are married, have been wonderful to you. And they have been good to you. Alhamdulillah, I do not doubt that in the least, the slightest. But that's where it starts. Because if you chose a good spouse for you, what about choosing a good spouse for your children eventually? And did you know that there are many people in our community that are single, both men and female? Many people in our community that are single, both male and female, they're looking for spouses. And guess what they're looking at? They're going overseas, looking in this and this. We have people in our community, because we don't know each other, and because we don't love each other, and because we're different nationalities. So somehow, I don't know why, the Bangladeshi and Pakistani, they don't want to marry the kids, and the Syrian and the Somali, or the Saudi Arabian and the Egyptian, they don't want to marry. Why? Why y'all bring that trash over here with y'all? You can start over here, like I said, you can start from a clean slate. You have no excuse to hold on to baggage. But there are
Mentality.
That's a mentality. There are single teenagers and young adults that are ready to get married and looking for someone. But we don't know each other enough to make it happen here. And that's a problem that we have to address. Or we're going to be boo-hooing. We're going to be crying about what's going to happen because of that. You see your kids, they don't want to get married no more because it's so easy. They can go here, your Muslim Fatima, she can go with John, Jake, and Matthew, and Mark, and them, and go have a good time. No problem. No marriage necessary in their minds. And then you're a good old Muhammad, that sweet little boy that was eating cookies and cake in your living room, grows up and he wants, Kimberly and Jessica and everybody else, and he doesn't think he needs to get married. He can do what he needs to do just like that. Because you didn't address the issue as a community. And it's not just you. Every community, I've seen the same thing. So the problem that we have to address together. Tayyib, what are some guidelines to parenting? Number one, child development is a long and sophisticated process. To develop your child, it is a long process. It is sophisticated. It's not easy. It's not 1, 2, 3, ABC. No, it takes planning. It takes strategy. Number two, set the right goals and always strive to improve yourself. You got to set goals. I don't know. Have you set goals for marriage? Did you set goals that, okay, my wife, we're married, it's been 1 month honeymoon, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Now let's start planning for kids. Usually, kid is an accident. You weren't expecting a kid this early in the marriage. 2 months later, she's pregnant. 9 months after that, you're having a kid. And it's been hardly a year, and you're already having a baby. You did no planning. You went to no courses. You attended no... And you know that the local government provides parenting classes. Listen, the local government's parenting classes are much better than nothing at all. Than nothing at all. Even most of the time it's coming from a secular perspective. But it's much better than nothing at all. It's better to have some training than to have none. Number 3, practice what you learn and share it with others. Did you know that if there's a sister in our community, even one sister, that is single and struggling with multiple children and she does not have the male representatives to come around and show her boys how to be men and how to make right choices, guess who the sins fall on for that? The whole community. Whole community. Because it's our responsibility to show those young boys how to behave like men. But we hardly want to be next to each other. As soon as we finish the salam alaikum, we're running out the door. What is that? And it's not just in one community, 2, 3, or 4. It's an epidemic across many communities. Epidemic. And then you only want to be with the people who speak your language. I know that that's your mother tongue and you just gravitate. I know, I understand that. It's natural, even for me. I just start speaking Arabic to somebody, even though that's not my mother tongue. It's an adopted language. But I just start speaking Arabic, and a brother who doesn't speak Arabic is next to us. And I forget that I should speak in an English language that he understands too, so he's included. You know, I forget that. I understand that that happens. But we can't let it be an excuse and continue to divide us and keep us apart. Number 4. Be good role models and teach your children self-reliance. Self-reliance. Most of the time our parents are teaching our kids to be dependent on them. Teach your kid, my mother taught me, my aunt said she forced me. My aunt says my mother forced me. I thought my mother taught it to me. But my aunt used to say, man, I used to think your mother was crazy sending you to kindergarten by yourself. You said, what? For real? Kindergarten? My mom used to send me, I lived in the projects of West Philadelphia. She used to send me, I had to walk maybe, 5 minutes? Literally, kindergarten. I had to get up, put my clothes on, put some oatmeal in the microwave. Kindergarten. I can't believe it myself. Just speaking to you, I can't believe it. It's so amazing. And she taught me, but it was a necessity. I lost my father before that. And if she were to be gone, she said, she reasoned with me afterwards. She said, if I was to be killed in the street, I wanted you to be as less of a burden possible to anybody who would take care of you. I wanted you to be able to fend for yourself. And it started from kindergarten. Most of our kids I've seen from Arab and Indo-Pak and all of the various nationalities, they're like 12 years old and they don't even know how to sweep a floor correctly. 12 years old, they can't wipe a counter. They'll wipe the counter and wipe the stuff on the floor. And they leave other dirt on the top of the counter. It's like Braille. You know Braille? Blind people, they read that's what it's like. 12 years old, 13 years old. Mom's still putting food in his mouth and ironing his clothes for him. Actually, I was getting on public transportation to go to school in 3rd grade. Public transportation. I would be standing on the bus stop and a guy smoking next to me and I would have to say, sir, excuse me, could you please put the cigarette out? It's bothering me. I had to learn how to communicate with people at 3rd grade. Public transportation, because my mother was teaching me to be self-reliant. And indeed, I became self-reliant, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Number 5, teach children to clearly see between right and wrong. When you put them in front of the television set, you're not teaching them to see between the right and wrong. You just put them there. And then they just sneak and go watch the rated R movie. Yeah, the PG-13 says PG-13. Parental guidance 13. Parental guidance means anything that a 13-year-old above that is watching, you parents should be there watching it with them to provide them guidance. It says it right there. Parental guidance 13. And then the television show that say mature 14. I get amazed at what the television shows have today for 14-year-olds. I can imagine what they're talking about in school tomorrow after seeing that. Honestly, I'm shocked. But you let your kids watch it, you probably watch it too. You in your room and they're in their room. Ya Allah, Ya Qayyum, is this parenting? Number 6, teach them good character traits. Teach them good character behaviors. You have to teach it to them. Son, this is how you're generous. Daughter, this is how you're honest. But in fact, we are sometimes stingy to one another or stingy to somebody, and they learn that stinginess, or we are dishonest to our children or dishonest to others, and that's when your children learn. Our parents used to say, when mom didn't want to meet or speak to a phone, the person calling them for the electricity company or something, water bill, calling to collect payment, She'd be like, tell them I'm not here. Tell them I'm not here. Then you learn, the child is learning from the parent how to deceive. So we have a lot of that too. We have to teach them instead good character traits. Number 7, develop the art of conversation. Remind you, the art of conversation. Develop the art of conversation. Learn how to speak to your children. You got to talk to them. You got to talk to them. Because if you don't talk to them, best believe they are Snapchatting, or other chatting with someone else. That's what they do because they feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable to speak to you because you didn't open up the channel. You walk around with your face all frowning and stuff. That's not going to work. You have to open. You have to learn how to communicate with them. Yes, your English is not that strong. I understand. But still, communicate with your children when they're very young so that they don't really mind your accent when they get older because they've been speaking to you for a long time. So you have to develop the art of conversation. Also, number 8, enjoy good parenting. You have to enjoy good parenting. So your children are a blessing from Allah Jalla wa'ala. They're not some daunting task that is just a means of your stress. No. Do good parenting well and then enjoy it with them. Enjoy their time. Spend time with them. We have to become actively engaged in parenting. Some people think that just by sitting in the same room while everyone has their eyes glued to a screen, that's you spending time with your kids. Nope. You have your eye on your iPhone and your, Android, and your children has their eyes on theirs. Or you're in the same room and you're watching TV together. You're not saying anything to each other. Or the games. That's not spending time with your kids. You should read with them. Start from a younger age, so it doesn't seem so foreign and so boring when they get older. Start really young. Read to them. Play sports with them. Play games with them. Solve puzzles with them. Cook with them. Eat with your children, please. Joke with them. Shop with them. Wash dishes with them. Do yard work with them. Do community service with your children. Spend time. That time will prove to be priceless later on. We can also benefit from how the Prophet ﷺ raised his 4 girls. Let's see if you guys can give me 2 or 4 names from the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. He had 4. Give me 2. Fatima, Kulthum. Who else? Give me the other 2 names. Zainab and Ruqayya. Good job. He helped in raising his grandchildren like Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein. He also raised Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and Zayd ibn Harith. We can learn from how he raised them. I'm going to give you some quotes. In this book, Parent-Child Relations, it says, to be able to establish a thriving society, we need to have excellent knowledge of child rearing and character building. Child rearing means raising children. In order to establish a thriving society, we must have excellent knowledge, not mediocre. Because is mediocre knowledge, is it acceptable in any of your fields? To know half-half? Can you go to work knowing half-half? Knowing a quarter? No, you have to know, you have to be average at least, not mediocre. So why then in parenting should we be less than that? Now, let's see if we can find some more quotes. This quote is also from that book. It says, children are the future of humanity. Through children, we can change the world. And through children, the world is being changed. Did you notice that? Through children, the world is being changed. Start them off really young. And then they change and affect their minds constantly and consistently until when they're adults, there's no problem swaying them this way or that way. Children are likely to live up to what you believe of them. If you tell your children you can do it, they will do it. If you tell them you cannot do it, they will not do it. So be positive in your dealing with your children. A nation is the sum of its families and the sum of its men and women. A whole nation is a sum of the individual families. If the family is broken, guess what? The nation is broken. If the family is spoiled, the nation is spoiled. So each of us individually, we're going to reflect our nation as a whole. We're responsible for building a good nation and leaving a good legacy. If we want to change a nation, we have to change the home. If you want to change a nation and influence a nation, you have to influence your own house. For every child at risk, there's also a family at risk. If a child is at risk for drugs, or at risk for murder, committing crimes, that's a whole family that's at risk also. So every troubled child in your community, you have an added responsibility to have some influence in their lives to possibly save them from any trouble. Smart is not something that you just are, but it's something that you can become. You can become intelligent. Some people are born smart, but others can become intelligent. So keep that in mind. To change the family, we have to change ourselves. As we said, to change the society, we have to change the family. But to change the family, each individual has to positively influence their own selves. And as your children grow, your role as a parent will evolve from a manager to a consultant. You're managing things to now you're giving advice. And it also evolved from an on-site supervisor to a mentor. It evolves. Let's open up, just give maybe 3, maybe 4 minutes for Q&A. If you have any Q&A, let's go over there. Yes?
There's a hadith that says, Muslim said, "داعبوهم سبعا وأدبوهم سبعا وصاحبوهم سبعا."
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I heard of a narration like that. I'm not sure if it's a hadith. 7 years, play with them. Teach them manners and conduct for 7 years. And
صاحبوهم سبعا.
accompany them. Be friends with them for 7 years. I heard this narration before. Consultation, that's right. This seems pretty decent, you know. To play with them for 7 years. Teach them how to behave for 7 years. And then be their friends for 7 years. 7, 7, and 7 is what? 21. Good job. Any more questions or concerns or comments? Yes, sir.
You said if the family is spoiled, then the community is spoiled, right?
Yes, sir.
How does that happen?
How does that happen? If each individual family is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, if they're not right, then basically you'll have a community, which is a bunch of families, will also not be right. And if each community is not right, then you'll have a society or a nation that is not right. See? So it starts from the family is, any of you all seen a beehive before? You know the cell that the bees put the eggs in? And how they're all the same? What is it? Is it an octagon? Looks like a stop sign, I believe. The shape of each cell of the honeycomb. Pick up a honeycomb. They're all the same shape. And the bees have to tend to each cell. The cells are identical. And therefore, you make a beautiful honeycomb that is supported in a structure that holds all of that honey and keeps the weight of those bees. But if those cells are broken and deformed, then it will affect the whole beehive. You guys get it?
Yes.
We have to focus on that family unit. We are responsible. Any more questions? Well, just a little bit over, just for any more questions for our sisters or comments. Yes? Anything?
Well, it no make sense, you know, because the last several years, people come on member, please take care of your child, please take care. They go out and come here and go out.
Our brother said that for several years, people have been advising parents take care of your children.
Yeah.
But I think that the excuse that people have had for decades is that there's no material on it. Now you have no excuse. Now you have maybe tens or hundreds of books written in English, pulling from Quran and Sunnah, pulling from other, you have it. Now you can refer to it, and you can benefit from it and learn your lesson. If we don't learn now, we're going to be sorry tomorrow, and we're going to leave the worst legacy for people. We should be gifting our children to the people of the future. We're giving the people of the future a gift, and those are our children. If we're not going to do that, those people will curse us and say, what did you all leave behind for us? You know what I mean? It's really deep. So may Allah make it easy for us. I guess if you don't have any other questions, we will continue for that. My intent for this lecture is not to bash anyone, not to make anyone feel like their efforts are useless or worthless. I'm just trying to pull the screen and open it so people can see. And that people can feel like, man, I can do something about it, and I will do something about it. Inshallah, this is our first lecture. We'll continue with 6 more. If you have any questions, please be sure to send them to me. And inshallah, we'll get to them. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.